guys, and welcome back to Age Out Rise Up. In this week's Community Stories, I had the privilege of interviewing Jeremy Jones. Now, I said this week, but I'm going to try and push as many of these interviews out as I can because it is the holiday season, and I know that a lot of people are alone, and I wanted to create some quality content of people who I hope will inspire you as much as they've inspired me. Jeremy was a former foster himself. He started life with his grandmother, and he was very lucky to be able to do that. And later on in life, he ended up going into the foster system, and he had some principles that helped him avoid some of the pitfalls that a lot of people fall into, and a lot that he currently deals with as a foster father. He runs a transitional group home for infants all the way up until 18 years old. And just some of the things that he has dealt with, I found incredibly both inspiring, and it's just a very fascinating conversation. So I hope you will enjoy this. So without further ado, let's get into Jeremy's story. So Jeremy, tell me about yourself.
I am 37. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina. Currently, I run a youth shelter for homeless, at-risk youth, foster children as well. I'm currently in my next to last semester at the University of Missouri St. Louis, pursuing my master's degree in public policy administration. Along with a graduate certificate in nonprofit management and leadership.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So I want to go all the way backwards, because you were a foster child yourself, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So how did you start your foster care journey?
Okay, so I was first introduced to foster care at a really young age because my grandmother was a foster parent. I saw what a foster parent should look like. I saw how integrating children into your family, your personal family, what it should look like. And then, as she got older, she started having health complications, and she stopped being a foster parent first, and then eventually she had to relinquish her rights to me and my younger brother. So I went into foster care the day before my 5th grade graduation. And I stayed there until I emancipated myself at 20 when I moved to St. Louis, Missouri. Foster care was rough. I mean, I'm sure everybody has, a very similar story, but foster care was rough. And my town was very small. And thankfully, my grandmother took me everywhere with her. So I knew how to get around and maneuver if I needed to, which definitely came into play as I became a foster child. And there were so many. You're placed in foster care usually for abuse or neglect, and then for me in my story, I went into foster care and received way more abuse and neglect within the foster care system than I did before, I got in. So I was classified as a runner. I ran frequently, but it was never to go and hang out with friends or stay somewhere overnight or anything like that. I always ran back to the Division of Social Services. If I couldn't get in contact with my worker by the phone, I was definitely going up to the agency. And they knew me, they saw me. Sometimes I'd be sitting there waiting on them first thing in the morning, because my grandma just taught me that, there's certain things that people should not do to you, and hitting me, treating me unfairly. I remember there was the one occasion where the foster parent wanted all of us to shower together. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not happening. Oh my gosh, there's so many stories, to be honest. Trafficking marijuana around. The foster brother, he wasn't in foster care. He was the foster parent's actual son. And because we were younger, he told us, hey, you get caught with this stuff on you, nothing's gonna happen. But if I get caught with it, I'm going to jail. So we would put the marijuana in our book bags, and he would give us addresses, and we hop on our bikes and ride around town distributing this marijuana. So the foster care was a lot, but it taught me how to persevere in life, definitely, and it taught me essentially how I wanted to be loved and how I wanted to love other people. So um, definitely, I take that from all the experiences that I've had.
So how many foster homes were you in?
Countless, countless, because I mean, it wouldn't take much for me to run away, just because I knew how I should be treated, and not that I needed to be treated better than anybody else, but some of the kids were just so used to how these foster parents operated that they took it as normal, and it was very abnormal. Um, so countless foster homes, but for my last 2 years of high school, I was moved to a residential facility, and it was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
And that's interesting because sometimes when I interview people, they say it's the worst. And then sometimes when I was a kid, it was always a threat, make it work in this home or you'll go to a group home and they'll eat you alive.
Hmm.
And then I find out actually sometimes group homes are amazing.
Absolutely.
So what was amazing about, or what was great about the group homes that you were in? Or what
So
was the best
the
thing?
I was only in one, and basically what happened was, well, originally when my grandmother first had diabetes, she moved away to Atlanta. So she was gone for a few years, and then she came back to South Carolina. By my 10th grade year, I was doing well. My ninth grade year, I did really well in school. I was placed in all college prep courses and things of that nature. But by the 10th grade year, she was back, and so my mind was, I need to see my grandmother as much as possible. So I essentially flunked out not flunked out, but I failed 10th grade because I spent probably all my time with her than going to school. And so I had a guardian ad litem who was very instrumental in getting me placed at this residential facility. She's just like, this doesn't make sense. You're an AB student, now you have all F's, so I don't feel like you're being watched the way you need to. I don't think you're being cared for the way you need to be, so we're going to move you here. And so um, I don't know, I blossomed at this. It's by the name of Epworth Children's Home in Columbia, South Carolina. And man, I still have relationships with a lot of these people to this day. Definitely the guys who I grew up with in that home, but the staff, all the staff, still I felt like it was a family, and I never had to worry about eating. I never had to worry about anybody abusing me. I never had to worry about um, I don't know, all types of things that kids need, especially the social interactions, um, even to like exercising and things of that nature. We did it all. We went on camping trips, just things that I never thought about as a kid. We definitely did there. Um, and again, like I said, I blossomed at the new school. I graduated on time. I went to summer school right before my 12th grade year. And this is all with their pushing and their prompting. And we know you can do it. And we never thought about college. And due to them and their support, I got into a really good HBCU in South Carolina, and I don't know, it's just a blessing in disguise. Yeah, I've heard what you've heard as well, that these residential facilities are just, they're here, they're getting you prepared for jail and all this stuff, but it was nothing like that. Nothing like that.
And so was it, what I've wondered about is do you feel more comfortable? Do you think that kids feel more comfortable when they're with people who are in the same circumstance as them? Do you think that was a factor in it?
I do think that definitely was a factor. Some of the guys who were there had been there for a number of years, and they were being open and honest about their experiences. And then there were some of us who were, just coming in, never been into a group home facility, that type of situation before, and only been in foster homes. Um, there's definitely a different mentality going from a foster home to a group home, but I don't know, those other 11 guys that were there with me, like, you just had somebody, you had multiple people who were all in your same age range, who were all going through the same thing, mostly the same things that you were going through. And like I said, I see those guys as brothers still to this day. We talk often. So it's definitely a bond that we shared and pretty much have shared for life.
And how about their outcomes? Are they doing pretty well as well?
So there were four of us that graduated together. There were a couple younger guys than us. Um, so when we graduated, three of us went off to school, and one went into the army. Um, Now there's three of us that are in the army, and I'm the one still in school. So, um, I mean, they're all successful in their own right. I just had one former brother who just ran for a political position in Arkansas. So definitely there's some successes there, and not a lot of I think people see foster, and I even me when I look for statistics for foster kids and once they graduate school, and it's just not a lot of information out there, but it's always very low. But coming from this environment, um it would be not the norm because a lot of us have went on for and you know been successful with school. So
So what do you think were the top things that made you break the cycle? So let me rewind all the way back to when you lived with your grandma.
Mhm.
Um, that's the earliest memories you have, like you don't remember living with your parents.
So my mom, who I love dearly and we have a great relationship now, she was 18 when she had me, so she was still in high school. My grandmother essentially took me from her. So it's not like she just gave me up and was like, I'm not going to raise this kid. My grandma's like, you're a child yourself. I'm going to take him. Now what happened later in life, because there's four of us, four siblings, she started using drugs and she was addicted to drugs. So I never went back to her. Um, my brother that's younger than me ended up coming to live with my grandmother. And then my sister ended up going to stay. I'm sorry, she went into foster care, and my youngest brother went into foster care as well. But this is before I went into foster care. Um, and then they were adopted out. So the youngest two were adopted out, and then me and my brother that's next to me in age went to live with. Well, I was already there, and he came to live with my grandmother. And then when she got sick, we both went into foster care together. So um, I definitely knew my mom, and she always was around. Never called her mom then, always by her nickname, because I just didn't view her as my mom, even though I knew she was my mom. So yeah, those were really the earliest memories. I was never with her ever. Like from 3 months on, my grandmother had me.
So your grandmother she gave you the foundation to kind of stay on the right track, it looks like.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what were those foundational things that she gave you?
So one, she definitely held me accountable, even as a small child. And this is what I try to teach the kids that I work with now, and my fiance and dealing with her son is accountability. Now I know for some people, um, they may not agree with it for a child, but I think the earlier that a child understands their own accountability to themselves, the better they can be for society. If we just always let a kid do what kids do what they want to do, and it's just like, oh, they're just kids. They're eventually going to be this 18-year-old or 19-year-old, 20-year-old who doesn't understand accountability. So, um, she definitely held me accountable. Um, I think that she gave me a foundation of religion, believing in a higher power than myself, that I've kept with me since I was a young child, and then just the belief that you can do it. Whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it. And I believe, this is what she used to tell me, I believe you could do whatever you want to, but it doesn't matter if I believe it. You have to believe that you can do it. And so these things always stay with me while I was in care. I definitely had a time where I was mad at the world, mad at my family because I have a big family, a successful family too. And I felt like I was left alone. Nobody came to save me or anything like that. But um, as I got older and I emancipated myself, I just realized that I love them still. I'm not mad at anybody. But for me to do what I need to do in life, I have to bet on myself. I have to believe in myself. Um, and that's just where that comes from. It definitely comes from her.
So when you were in these various foster homes, and they were very short terms because you'd always run, um, were the people in those homes, were they ever encouraging in that same way, or was it such short times that you didn't even get to know them?
So not all of them were short. Um, I had one really long. I stayed from seventh grade until 10th grade, which is definitely the longest. It was 4 years. Um, there was a matriarch in the family who definitely, you know, pr- gave me my grandmother's vibes, if that makes sense. Um, she passed away right before my 10th grade year. And so I feel like the foster father, who was older as well, not working, um, and again, there was only me and another other child. But once she passed away, they started taking in more kids. Of course, they needed more money, and it just kind of went downhill from there. But she definitely showed me those motherly instincts. Definitely showed me that she cared. Definitely pushed. Definitely bragged on me. Like, you know, this kid who, people always have a bad connotation of foster children. Usually they feel like you've done something to be in the system, which is not the case at all. um she would tell people, oh yeah, he's smart, he's this, he listens. Like, people don't understand how powerful their words are, but when you hear somebody who is not your family, um as a child, praising you, it only pushes you and propels you to do even better things. You don't want to let that person down. And I think people are so, I'm not going to say afraid. I don't know what word it is, but it's so hard to get a compliment from people nowadays. But again, I try to big my kids up that I work with all the time, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've come from. You may be the first person that's giving them a compliment in years, telling them that they've done something right in years. Our words are powerful. So yeah, that was definitely my longest stay. I think I was in another foster home for 1 year. Everything else is maybe 3 months. Shortest probably was like a couple days. It's just I wasn't taking it. I wasn't taking
I can totally relate to that. Um, so you're in the South. Were you ever in like multiracial homes, or were they always African American?
So it's funny you say that. My brother that's next to me in age is biracial. His dad is white. Of course, my mom's black, and he had to go to not had to, but I think they tried to put him in a home where there was a white father and a black mother. Um, I really like the family. Like, I got to go visit him in that environment. I really like the family. He I don't know if he didn't like the family or his behavioral issues were just too much for them, but they ended up taking him back to DSS. So that was my only experience with a multi-racial family.
What do you think about that? Do you think that they should try to match kids with families that match them?
Not necessarily. I mean, if there's a completely Caucasian family who is out there and they're doing the work and they're really there for the kids, take whatever race kid that they give you. Like, I've seen it. I've definitely seen it. I think I've seen it more as an adult working in this field than as a kid being a child in it. I definitely have kids and parents who either multiracial, with a one Caucasian or one black, um, or I've definitely seen, two like two mothers as foster children. I mean, I think I've seen it all now, um, as I'm older versus back then. And again, as long as the adults are treating the kids the way they're supposed to, I don't care. Bring two aliens here, and if they're gonna raise the kids right, let's go.
I love it. So how about uh you said as long as they're doing the work. What does the work mean?
So for me, I don't have any kids. I've been married before. I was a step parent, and there's work that has to be done to earn the trust of those kids wherever they're at. And to me, that's similar to being a foster parent. It's not just enough to have a big house and enough room and enough beds to be a foster parent. It's not enough to go to those trainings and pass them and now you're certified. You have to do the work. You have to, just as much as these kids have to come in and earn, you know, your trust for whatever it is, if you want them to play sports or to go to their friends' houses and things of that nature and be able to trust them, they have to get that same, you have to earn their trust as well. Um, there's I plenty of foster parents that I've gone in on day one. Prime example, my first foster parent, I'm new to this whole thing. I'm 11 years old. And she presents one way in front of my caseworker. True story. As soon as my caseworker leaves, they put locks on the cabinets and the refrigerators. That told me everything I needed to know. I can't go in her kitchen. There's a lock on the fridge, so I definitely can't eat when I want to. I'm at the begging mercy of this lady. If she doesn't feel like getting up to unlock the refrigerator, then I can't get anything out of the refrigerator. Again, this is the same lady who, there was four of us. There was four foster children. There was an older boy. No, I'm sorry, there was three of us. There was an older boy, it was a younger boy, and then me. So he probably was like 9, and then the older boy was 16. She told him it was shower time, so in my mind, okay, we're all about to take turns. But they both go into the bathroom together with the water running. And I hear her telling them, like, hey, you guys got to hurry up in the shower. So I go in, like, what are y'all doing? And they're like, we have to take showers together or else we don't take a shower. The next day I ran away. There's, even at 11, I knew that was wrong.
Right,
I
absolutely.
I have a 6-year-old brother. I don't shower with him. So why would I shower with you guys? So there's just work that has to be done by the foster parents to earn the trust of their child, and not just the trust. You know you want this kid to look at you as a parental figure, not just a regular adult. So you're going to have to work on your end as well. And I mean, I probably could go deeper into it, but I just feel like that's like the number one thing. The Just having enough space isn't enough.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, the four walls. I mentored a little girl once, and her situation was really really rough, and I was too young to foster. Well, I thought I was too young to foster. I was 21.
Gotcha.
And we were talking about her life, and she goes, they might not love me, but at least I have a roof over my head.
Right.
And I
That's
just thought
sad.
it is extremely extremely sad, but it is a situation where in some homes you just find you wait it out because you don't know if the next home is going to be worse.
Correct. Correct.
So you said you run a shelter now.
Hmm.
So how did you get into that?
So I've been here since 2003. I started working in the nonprofit field in 2004. It's my first real, quote unquote, real job, and I was just a youth specialist um in a residential facility. I've been in one from 16 to 18, and so this felt familiar to me. I worked there for 10 years, 3 years as that youth specialist, and then eventually I got a promotion to youth specialist supervisor. And so after that, I went to another agency by the name of Youth in Need, where I worked for 2 years as a outreach specialist, which is meeting the kids right where they at. So we may work with foster kids, but for the most part, it was the homeless population. And there's a huge homeless population in St. Louis of kids under the age of 18 that are sleeping in vacant buildings, um, that are sleeping in tents, sleeping in the park, just because they're running away from foster care, they're running away from abusive parents, they're running away from um, being sex trafficked, and so those kids could call us, and we wouldn't, you call the police, they're probably gonna, handcuff you and put you in the back of the car. But we would go out and we provide them with all types of resources. We would provide them with food. We would provide them with groceries. We would provide them with clothes. If they wanted to go to a youth shelter, we would take them to a youth shelter. Um, and then after those 2 years, I got back into school really heavy, so I couldn't do those hours. So I ended up being a program manager for a transitional living home within Youth in Need. Um, which was different, because those kids didn't really need us as much. They needed the shelter, but most of them had jobs or were in school or in college and things of that nature. And so,
Can I ask you,
um,
how do they get to that point where what is that deciding factor for these kids to go from being on the street to taking that kind of 180 turn and going, I want to go to school or I want to get a job? I live in Seattle and there's a lot of don't bother me, I want to do my own thing. I, I
right,
I believe that we have very kind of a very entitled culture, which is
we
weird
do.
to say with like the homeless population, because you would never think of that as being entitled, right?
Correct. Right.
But sometimes people want those things. Sometimes those things are seem to be better for them, or they feel like they're better for them than quote unquote normalcy.
Correct. So what I found is that a lot of people don't want to. A lot of kids, just in general, um, don't want to follow the rules. So they're eligible to go to these. They could go back to their foster parent. They could go back home. They could go to any of. We have about 7 different youth shelters in St. Louis, but that would be somebody telling them what to do. And they're like, hey, I've been on my own since 12 years old. I'm 17 now. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I'm not going to follow your rules. I'm not giving up my cell phone. And so a lot of them stay on the streets. What I do see is that a lot of kids, they're abused in the homes or they're taken advantage of in their homes. And then they go out to the streets and think that it's going to be different. And it's not different. And they're abused on the streets. They're abused, they're taken advantage of in the streets. People are robbing them and taking their money, and they can't go to the cops because then the cops are probably going to take them somewhere. So they end up calling us and asking us to take them to the youth shelters. You almost have to be at a point of desperation or being broken before you say, okay, I can't do it on my own. I really need you guys' help. And it's unfortunate to say that nowadays, sometimes for those kids who are at that almost age, um, what I've seen is that they have to get to that point. They have to want it. I can want it for you all day. I can want it. We could easily round up all the kids and put them in a youth shelter, but would they stay? And sometimes I ask myself, would I have stayed if I'd ever got to that point? I never was homeless. I never ever slept out on the streets. But if I ever got to that point, would I have accepted the help, or would I just continue to do what I wanted to do? And again, I thank my grandmother for raising me the way that she did, because I don't think I would have taken the help. Absolutely. I would have. Whatever you tell me I need to do to be in this youth shelter, I'm going to do. Whatever it takes me to get to this transitional living, or for you to help me get into school, I'm going to do it. But I just don't think a lot of our kids have the mentality that I'm grown now and I'm going to do it my way. And it usually takes them to be, I don't want to use the word broken, but just at their at their wits end before they accept the help that they really need.
Yeah, rock bottom is
Absolutely.
where a lot of people, that's why I've named my program Age Out Rise Up, because
Mm,
so many people are down at that very bottom
correct.
level, and they don't know that there's an option for them,
Right.
oftentimes because they've been told so many times there is no option, you're nothing, like you said before, words matter so much, and I'm so glad you
Absolutely.
got to hear positive words. But a lot of people in foster care,
Don't.
it's the opposite. I remember being in a home, and the neighbors would go, wow, if I had one like Carob, I would totally do this, but and they'd say, oh, but you don't know how she really is.
Wow.
And it was the opposite. Like, other
Right.
people would build me up, and my foster parents would push me down. And I wasn't even like a quote unquote bad kid. like
Right.
like my
Right.
badness would be, I'm gonna lock myself in the closet and read a book. Not exactly not exactly sleeping around and getting high, you know what I mean?
Right. Right. Oh my God. That's
So
crazy.
um so what about, I'd like to know, if you can tell me, like, what are the rules to live in your shelter?
So for the homeless youth, I think the hardest thing now, and it's just this generation, is giving up that cell phone. It's their power to the outside world. I get it. Like, I feel like even for me, I'm attached to my phone, probably for a different reason. And I just, I want to be able to be reachable to people who need me, accessible. These 16, 17-year olds don't need to be accessible. But in their minds, they have to be. You should see how many people come, or how many kids come, and you're getting to do the intake, and you're like, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to let you use your phone, but you have to sign out. So you have to be outside of our shelter to use your phone. Oh no, I ain't giving up my phone. Y'all can't have my phone.
Wow.
So you're turning down a bed and food, and we're gonna get you some clothes. We're gonna do all that. You turning that down for your cell phone? Absolutely,
It's an addiction.
it is.
It's an addiction. And what you find, with like social media and things like that, is that you can create a life, with filters. You can filter your life and be cool, and be very, very hip and trendy and
Whoever
whatever
you want
else.
to be, right?
And
Can you get down,
and
please?
and I think that for so many people, they want to escape their reality.
That's true.
The virtual is better than actual reality,
Correct.
which is sad. And it also, I was just listening to something on YouTube yesterday about education, and how we're kind of dumbing down our
Right.
we're dumbing down our kids, and I think that our phones are doing it faster than anything.
I can agree to that.
So
I can agree. For us, it's more of a safety issue, just because we have kids of all ages, birth to 19 and a half. So if you're in there taking pictures of people, then you're breaking HIPAA immediately. And they don't understand that. And they would rather sign back out or leave back out without finishing the intake than to turn in their cell phones.
that's just that's just sad.
Yeah.
So what opportunities do they get when they come into the shelter?
So if they're homeless youth, we're definitely immediately getting them an interview with our transitional living program. Um, and then if ours is full, then we're reaching out to the other transitional living programs within the area. So again, there's about 4 or 5 transitional living programs in St. Louis and St. Charles, and then like I said, there's about 7 youth shelters. So if that's what they want to do, if they're willing to do the work and be committed to transitional living, we're helping them get to that. We're going to set up all those interviews. Usually, transitional living is asking for you to either have a job, um, or be in school. Most of our kids are either one of the two. Um, Even with staying on the streets, they're still working, or somehow they're still getting to school. And so
And
we're
do they
just
get into school because there are opportunities for these kids to go to school? Like, how is it covered financially, or how does that
so
work?
when so when we say school, are we meaning college or we meaning high school?
Oh, well, you're talking about high school age.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, and I guess I'm asking about both, but I'm asking if there's opportunities because a lot of people don't believe that there's opportunities. You know,
Yeah, so for us, I sent them. So I graduated from Florissant Valley Community College. It's one of the three community colleges in the area. And even me at my advanced age, when I write on the FAFSA form that I was a former foster youth, I get more money. Um, and I try to, again, I try to tell people that more money means more opportunity to go to these schools, to have them paid for. I didn't owe Florissant Valley anything once I left. Everything had been paid for, and I was getting the refund money off of that too. So I mean that helped. I'm not homeless or in their situation. So let's go to school. Let's sign up for school. Let's sign up for FAFSA. You're going to get more money, and you're going to get money back. Now, this money can be used for a bevy of things, but if we have you in the transitional living program, then you can start putting this money to the side, and you can use it for something bigger, a bigger purchase. You can use it. Hopefully, we can save enough. You could buy you a car right out, so now you don't have to, use public transport. I mean, there's so many different options, but this generation loves instant gratification. So if they're not getting their car right then and there, then to them it's just so far off that they can't see it, they can't grasp it. And so and sometimes it ends up just being a bad story. You get a kid, you finally get them. There's been two kids actually. We get the kid enrolled in school. They get their money, and it's like, I don't remember how much it was, maybe 2 grand or something like that. They just stopped going to school. Well, guess what? Now next semester they might not even give you that money again, or whatever the case may be. I think that the male that I'm in my mind, he ended up leaving out of the transitional living program and everything once he got this measly $2,000, and it's just like, oh my God, we had a plan that we were going to work to, and so again, I can believe it for you. Same thing my grandma was telling me. I can believe it for you, but it has to be within you. And for the great stories that we do have, those kids truly believe, and they listen, and they were willing to wait. Um, there's just so many that stories where you're like, oh my gosh, we could have did so much, but I can't do it by myself. Or we as a community can't do it by ourselves. The kid has to have some buy-in. So
so I'd love to hear a highlight story, one of the best stories you've got.
all right, one of the best stories that I have. So we had a kid at Youth in Need when I was running the TOP program, who she was this great track athlete in high school. Um, her and her mom, she was in foster care too, but she maybe 3 times she had been, her mom did everything she needed to do. She went back with mom, and then things burnt out. She went back into care. It happened like 3 times. And then finally the last time, the caseworker called us and was like, hey, this kid can't go into a group home. She can't go into a foster home because we think she's gonna run. Can we get her into your transitional living program? And I think for me, it'd have been my first foster kid who had been in that program. Everybody else were kids off the street. So she came and she finished out her last semester, begrudgingly. Like it's just like lost all hope, faith in everybody, which is understandable. I've been there. So um, she went off to school her first semester, did okay, came back, and we have a staff office, and it's a staff office, but it's essentially an apartment. And we kept one room just in case we figure anybody would ever come back or maybe needed the night or whatever, they could stay in there. And she was the first kid to come back for the summer, and she ended up staying there the whole summer. And again, I'm in school at this same time, so she's seeing me and how I operate because I had a summer class, and She was like, "Oh man, I like I had my planner and everything out. Like this is what I'm doing on this day. This is what I'm doing on this day." And she took that for the next semester. And when she came back for the Christmas break, she was just explaining how it was so much easier because she had never been shown how to break her work down. She took it, and that's what it was. She didn't really talk to any of her peers because of course she had been in foster care. And kind of like me, I did the same. Nobody knew I was in foster care, or that I lived at Epworth or anything like that. So she kept all that stuff to herself. And just from us spending that time together that summer, she just blossomed at school. And she's graduated. So that's a blessing. I don't have many kids who I can say that they graduated and got their 4-year degree. But she ended up graduating. Um, Last I heard, she was trying to go back to get her master's degree, but she was also working at the agency we that she was used to live at. So I wish that I had that story. In my mind, I always thought I'm gonna go back to South Carolina. I'm gonna work for Epworth, and I'm gonna be that person who can get to the kids. Look, I used to live here, so now you can see what you can be. She was actually she was the personification. She ended up being a personification of that because she actually came back to work for the agency that she used to live at. And so I know, even though I don't work there anymore, I know that she has been a role model figure for those kids because I used to be you guys. So that's definitely one of my most favorite stories.
That's an awesome
Yeah.
story. So I have a question about the education and going back into something. Do you ever feel like you know better than what you're being taught because you've lived it?
Yes. A lot, all the time, actually. So there's a lot of stuff in the public policy administration that's geared toward politics, which is cool. I love learning about politics, and again, I hope one day I could be a political figure for somebody. I don't know, but when we start talking about nonprofits, and not necessarily the nonprofit management piece, but when we start talking about nonprofits, and then we venture into the group home area. Well, I used to live there, and I've now worked for a couple. So I feel like I have, a little bit of, I feel like I can throw my opinions out there, but I listen, and some of my classmates who know my backstory, they will come and ask after the fact, or if we're on break or something like that. And it's like, is that how it was when you? And it's like, no, not at all. But I get it's school, and this is the way that it has to be taught. So, you know.
I asked that because I grew up in the foster system. I lived in 19 homes in 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and I put myself into care when I was 8.
Wow. Okay.
So it's fine. But and then we were only able to have one child, and so we wanted to adopt. I really wanted
Right.
to adopt from foster care because I was certain that there would be some child there like me.
Hmm.
And um to watch these social workers who are like 20 years old and quite frankly oftentimes clueless,
Correct.
I'm like, there needs to be guidelines, there needs to be expectations. You don't have love when you just give somebody, oh, thank you, you're welcome, here you go, free reign.
Correct.
You don't get free reign. We're not locking cabinets, but they're I'm like, that's insane.
Right.
We're not locking cabinets, but there are rules.
Correct.
If you want to participate in this, then well, let's make sure that your room is tidy.
Absolutely.
Like expectations. And
Right.
today they're literally saying things like, well, you can't have expectations because that can trigger our kids. And then you wonder why our kids are all about instant expectations. They want
Absolutely.
everything now.
Absolutely.
And if you teach them in foster care to get everything now, then all of a sudden they turn 18 and it does not come like that.
It does not. It does not. It
So
does
that's what
not.
I'm wondering, like, what are they teaching in schools? Because it just, it really doesn't seem like it's applicable common sense. I mean, how do we change the statistic that these kids are going out in the street? At what age do they need to have the hard truths told to them? My thought is that when they're in high school and the other kids are going to study hall, if you are aging out of care or if you don't have a lot of options, there should be a class that teaches you, the realities
Right.
of street life.
Right. I was just talking to my fiance the other day, and I was just like, it's got to be us former foster youth. I don't feel like politicians care enough. Um, I think that case managers are overworked to the point, not necessarily, I won't say that they don't care. I just think it's hard. I know that one of the agencies here is they're only supposed to be 15 kids per caseload, but you have case managers who have 45 kids on the caseload. They're not seeing their kids. If it's not us former foster youth who can come out and be a voice for these kids who are currently in there, nobody will ever speak up for them. So if we don't, and I love what that group is um the Facebook group that I love it because, and
Former
I wish
Foster
I had
Children United.
former Foster Children United. I wish that I had been in there a lot sooner. Um, but it is what it is. But I just think that the more voices and the more of us that are actually united can make a big enough voice to make a big enough difference. And it has to start with us. It has to. We can't let this generation. We can't stop doing what we're doing. You can't stop what you're doing. Um, because if we do, those kids will come out and they'll be. I mean, I was clueless, so I don't want them to be just as clueless as me. Yeah, it has to be us, and that's I feel like that's my life's mission at this point, is to make sure that things are better for the kids that are in there now and the kids that will be in there during my lifetime.
Well, and I think that if we make things better for the kids that are in there now, there will be a lot less kids in the
And
future in there.
yeah,
Sometimes I feel like, and I guess this is kind of conspiracy, but it's my truth. And I feel
hmm
like sometimes this teaching our kids to be entitled, teaching our kids this instant gratification is almost ensuring that there will be more children in foster care,
yeah. No, I agree.
and I the other thing is that's really hard is that I think there's a very strong line. There's a lot of people who want to help, but not everyone wants to help in the same way.
hmm
So some people believe that because you are a foster child and or because you were a foster child and because you have been victimized, that you are eternally a victim, and
Correct.
and thus you should be getting and getting and getting and getting and getting.
hmm
I tend to believe that we should get the things that we need, like education, healthcare, me- therapy, counseling,
hmm hmm
um, to a point, as a stepping stone.
Right.
But there has to be a point where we are then contributing to society.
Correct.
And some people, especially what I find with a lot of younger people, they don't feel that need to contribute back to society. Kind of starting to vet who I'm interviewing. I am specifically looking for those people who are actively doing something to change
Mm,
the cycle, because there's so many stories that we can hear. Like you said in the beginning, the low, it's 1 in 3 kids end up on the streets or in prison.
right.
Um, that's some very dismal odds.
Oh yeah.
But then,
Okay.
and but then I do filter through when I see these people who are like, and
Okay.
I have a life that you would never know if I didn't say something.
Right.
So, and I think that's where most of us want to be. And I don't, it's not like I really wanted to say something every single day, but I feel like you have to counteract this thing, especially right now. We're all told, especially by the color of our skin, we're all told
Mm,
to really magnify our victimhood. And
Correct.
I'm just not willing to do that.
No, I mean, I agree. Again, I agree. Like when I tell my story, it's not to, like you said, I don't want to be the victim. I hear it all the time. I joined I'm a member of Phi Beta Sigma fraternity, and when I told my line brothers, it was like, oh my God, so much sympathy. But it's like I don't want that. I tell you because I want you to know who I am, and then why I move the certain way I do, or why I do things that I do. Is not for the sympathy. Um, you know, I'm successful in spite of what I went through. You know, I'm successful than a lot of people who didn't go through foster care. I don't want a pat on the back for that, but I want people to know my story, and I want people to know other people's stories who have risen above, because what we hear most of the time is what you just said, the homeless statistics, or the statistics. I saw a statistic saying that 67% of all prisoners at one point was in foster care. There's so many more of us. There's so many more of us out there that I don't want that to be the big statistic. I don't want kids who are in foster care to think that I have a 67% chance of going to prison. No, I want you to know that there's a lot of us who we may have taken our time. I didn't get my degree at 22 and then get my master's at 24. My issue was, because I went into foster care and never had anything, my whole mind frame was to work, so I didn't have to ask anybody for anything. Work so I could provide for myself and whomever I was with at the time. And that took precedence over schooling until I got a little older and more mature, and thinking like, hey, the more schooling I have, the more money I can make. So then it was like, all right, you very intelligent. Let's get this thing into overdrive. And so I graduated my associates, and then a year later my bachelor's, and now 2 years later my master's. So it was always there, and I could have done it straight out of foster care, but that wasn't my concern, just because of what I had been through. Now, had I, say, an auntie or uncle would have taken me in, and I would have never had to want for anything as a kid, and everything that I had, maybe I would have went straight through school, but that wasn't my path, and I'm fine with that. I'm so okay with that, because
Well, I think it makes you, I mean, it's given you purpose.
absolutely,
One thing is,
absolutely,
college isn't for everyone.
that's very true.
Another thing that I realized is that there's a lot of focus on these 18-year-olds and 18 to 21-year-olds who are aging out. And I definitely want to be there for them. But I've also seen people as old as 52 posting saying, how in the world do I learn to love myself when I was never loved?
Right.
So what I say, is that, that baggage never leaves us.
Correct.
It's always carried with us in some way, and then what matters is what we do with it.
Right.
And I think that, had you been adopted by a successful auntie and uncle, you might have not had that same compassion. You might have you might have just been focused on, let's make that money. I think it's Waldo Emerson, but I'm not positive. I have the quote downstairs. But it's how do you define success? Do your wisdom, to me, defines success. Right. How we make other people feel defines our success. I dropped out of college because I went immediately. I went from high school straight into college, and I had no one and nothing. And I dropped out, and
Right.
and it was work and get married, and part of me wishes I would have went to school to be a teacher, but when I see today's education system, I'm like, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. I feel like I can educate people this way. And,
right.
And that's, I do believe in God, and I do believe in having a purpose. So, and that doesn't mean a specific type of God, like you said, right. A higher power.
Just a higher power. That's it.
And it's just having that purpose. And I think that, one thing that I've heard before is that God doesn't give us more than we can bear. And there have been
Mhm.
many times when I've been like, "Are you sure about that?" I'm like, I think I'm well past my limit drowning here, you know?
I definitely know I've been there before.
You're just like,
Definitely.
I think I've got my load, and I know you say more stuff in heaven, but I don't care. I just
Right.
want to be able to function down here, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, but I do think that there is a truth that we are given those things that not only make us stronger, but uh, if we truly want to be successful and we truly want to be happy, we have to contribute
Correct.
to the greater, um, you know. And I am really impressed in all of the stuff that you're doing, and that you're a student in the meantime. So you have kids all the way from baby through 19. Did you say?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
It's and then we have at the minimum we have 18 kids at a time. So
wow.
it's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot and it's definitely a challenge. But it's a challenge in a good way. Because I know that each of those kids that come in, whether their parents are placing them there, whether they're homeless or whether it's a foster kid, that they need us. They need our help. And I'm just glad that we have the service to be able to, to help them.
Yeah. I guess my final question, because you've answered several several on my list in this conversation. It's been great.
Ooh.
Um, is really, how do you personally define success?
Well, I know when I was younger, the success was about how much money I made. Um, but now that I'm older and pushing 40s, I define my success by how I continue to help people on a day-to-day basis. And again, my focus is now switching to strictly foster kids. Um, I don't know how. I know I want a nonprofit. I don't. Well, originally I thought about a scholarship fund strictly for foster children. Um, but I'm moving soon from St. Louis to Virginia, so I don't know what the need there is, but like right now, the shelter we do is for anybody, everybody. I want to strictly focus on foster children, and that's how I'll continue to define my success about how I alter the way that society views the foster children. Period.
I love that. And do you blog or anything, or
I don't. Somebody just told me that I needed to blog, and I'm like, that's not my thing. So
you didn't you share that you were interested in being a mentor?
very much so.
Okay, so how would people get in touch with you?
Um, I mean, they can get in touch with me through Facebook. Um, or if, there was ever a specific person who somebody knew who needed to be mentored, they can always get my personal information.
Okay. This has been amazing. I really appreciate the time that you've taken. Congratulations on about to be getting married.
Thank you. I
That's awesome.
appreciate that.
This has been lovely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you too.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wasn't that an excellent story? I love interviewing people who grab their passion and turn it into something that they can make a living out of. And I also love that people take those hard things that happen in their lives and turn them into something that can inspire someone else or that can help someone else. So I hope that you have gotten something out of this and that it has inspired you as much as it has me. Be sure to like and subscribe. I plan on sharing as many of these as I can in the next week. So I just want to wish you guys the happiest of holidays and know that I'm rooting for you. All right, guys. Bye.